How's it going, guys? My name is Kevin. I'm a DP out of Orange County, California, and today I'm going over 10 tips, tricks, and hacks that solve some of the little quirks that you find with the camera and ultimately allow you to get the most out of the Canon C200. Some of these you may already know, but some of them you might not. And if you haven't already seen it, I made a pretty detailed video breaking down how I build and optimize my rig to suit every type of shoot. I'll add a link in the description. Okay, let's get into 10 tips for making the most out of your Canon C200. Alright, tip number 1. This is more of a hack and solves an annoying problem with the C200. If you're running a shoulder rig, chances are the C200 exhaust vent is constantly blowing in your ear, whispering sweet nothings to you. The vent is positioned right next to your ear, which is a terrible place to put an exhaust vent, especially if you're running a shoulder rig. It's super distracting having hot air blow into your ear when you're cam mopping. Or maybe you like the hot air. If that's the case, then fast forward. A super easy and cheap way to solve this is to take a couple of pieces of gaff tape and create a small lip to redirect the airflow. But be very careful not to cover the vent entirely, otherwise you run the risk of overheating and potentially causing damage to your camera. You've been warned. If you want a cleaner solution that's a little less risky, I found this dude who goes by BB Spurs who designed a 3D print of a vent block that you can download and print yourself. I'll leave that link in the description. Okay, next is tip number 2. If you ever want to control your camera settings remotely, either from your phone, tablet, or even your computer, you can use remote browsing. I've used this on countless shoots where we've rigged the camera above a drum set and we couldn't get up and hit start and stop, or we've rigged it where you just couldn't reach it and it was up and high out of reach. It can be a little tricky to set up and the UI isn't as great as other brands, but once you have it set up the first time, it becomes pretty straightforward and it's pretty reliable. You know, it's never crapped out on me on set. And it's super helpful to be able to trigger start and stop and change any aperture or ISO settings. You can change white balance, you can touch to focus, enable the internal NDs, all from your phone. The refresh rate on the live view isn't ideal to accurately monitor or pull focus from, but it just gives you a good idea of what's in frame. If you want to know how to set up remote browser on your C200, click this card above for a video I made going through how to set it up on your C200. Alright, tip number 3. The C200 has a great build, but one thing I absolutely hate is losing the little screws to all the components and all the accessories. And I always lose the screws to the mic shock mount when I'm building up or tearing down my rig. Luckily, I found these thumb screws on Amazon that fit perfectly, and their size makes it so they can't come out when they're unscrewed. To install them, you just got to detach the cable clip with a Phillips screwdriver, insert the thumb screws, and then reconnect the cable clip. You'll find that that cable clip keeps the screws from coming out when you're detaching the mount. You've got yourself retaining screws. Okay, here's tip number 4. If you've got a C200, one of the best lenses for run and gun is the Canon 17-55 because it's sharp, it's got IS, and it's f2.8. Also, it's super inexpensive. But one issue with using it with this camera is at its widest focal length, usually around 17 to 21 millimeters, you get a little bit of a vignette on the corners. Luckily, there's a setting in camera that fixes this so that you can use a full range without worrying about that vignette. If you navigate to page 6 of the camera setup page and turn on peripheral illumination correction, this takes care of that vignette. Okay, here's tip number 5. Probably one of my biggest frustrations with the C200 is its uneven base. It's really a design flaw in my opinion. It wiggles and it's not sturdy, it's just not stable, and it has play because it just doesn't sit flush on that base plate. And when you've got thousands of dollars sitting on a base plate, you want to make sure that it's stable. Now typically you'd buy like a full cage to solve this, but if you're not ready to fork out cash on a cage, the super easy cheap way is by creating a shim out of gaff tape and wedging it between the camera and the base plate. No more play. Alright, tip number 6. If you come from the photography or DSLR world, you're probably familiar with one-shot autofocus. Nothing new here, basically you just push a button and the camera will only focus once. Usually if you're using continuous autofocus, when you're focusing on a subject a little further away and something or someone crosses that line of sight, the autofocus will freak out. So one shot is awesome, but the way I use one shot is I assign it to the grip handle button. I find it much more useful and natural feeling when you have one shot AF activated and enabled just with the press of your thumb. If you assign it to button 1 on the right grip, you'll be surprised at how much more you use it when it's right at your fingertip. Alright, here's tip number 7. It can be pretty challenging to judge exposure and color when you're shooting and monitoring in log. Luckily, Canon allows you to enable a Rec. 709 monitoring LUT to help you better judge what you're shooting. I personally find that it helps me so much when judging what exposure I'm at, and it typically helps when I don't have an external monitor on my rig and I don't have those assist tools. To enable the LUT, go into the custom picture menu and select the first option, which is HDR/LUT. Go to video, select the BT Rec. 709 LUT. And if you want to be able to turn that LUT on and off quickly without having to jump back into the menu during a shoot, I like to assign it to button 6 on the camera body, which is shutter. I typically don't change the shutter during the shoot. It's usually always at 180 degrees. So this makes it easy to just press a button and judge exactly what image I'm capturing and not have to worry if you're underexposed or overexposed. Okay, now tip number 8. One feature that saved me countless times is recording 2 levels of audio. During interviews or recording dialogue, some subjects can have lively voices where their volume suddenly peaks because they got excited or something. In order to prevent your volume from distorting, which sounds terrible, the C200 allows you to record 2 separate levels in the left and right channels. To set that up, go to the audio setup page and down to channel 1/2 ALC link and select separated. On the back side of the camera, adjust channel 2's level a little lower than you have channel 1. In post, you have a lower level backup channel that you can refer to if you do see those peaks and it starts to distort. Okay, here's tip number 9. By far, one of the greatest resources in learning about this camera is the Canon C200 Facebook group. Honestly, this is where I learned the most about taking full advantage of the camera capabilities. Not only that, having a community of like-minded people and individuals who share the same experiences and use the same tools is just so beneficial. The search bar function is awesome because if you have a question, more than likely that question has already been asked and discussed. And also keep it positive if you join. There's already too much negativity in the world and so much crap going on. Let's all just try to get better together. Speaking of Facebook group, that brings me into my next tip. A lot of you have seen the SolidPod adapter that allows you to record Cinema Raw Lite into an external SSD, which is great if you want to save a little bit of money on CFAST cards. But if you want to save even more and still want to record RAW, there's this dude named Marian'S who makes an even cheaper solution that works just as good. It's the same idea, but it's just so much cheaper and saves you even more money. I think it's less than $100 for the adapter. I've been using mine from Marian for 2.5 years now, and it's been working flawlessly. I believe he makes a new version which uses an M.2 SSD, which is a lot smaller than the one I have. I mount mine up on a small rig SSD holder on the top of my top plate. But being able to record to cheap SSDs saves so much money and allows you to record to bigger media and edit right from those same SSD drives. I get about 133 minutes on a 1TB SSD. At the time of this recording, I'd have to spend $600 on a 512 CFAST card, while a 1TB M.2 SSD cost me less than $150. He doesn't have a store up, but if you DM him on Facebook, he'll get you sorted out. He's contributed a lot to the filmmaking community and is super active in the Facebook group, so he's good for it. I know I said 10 tips, but here's a bonus tip. Another useful thing that I picked up from the Facebook group is calibrating your monitor and your viewfinder to help you better see what you're shooting more accurately. These settings were from Vladimir and I found them to be great for monitoring. Alright, that's it guys. I hope you guys got something out of it. If not, then, well, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry. If you want to see more behind the scenes shots, lighting breakdowns, production breakdowns, gear pics, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I post a ton of cool content on there. And if you're ever in Southern California and you need some extra gear for your productions, hit me up on ShareGrid. Right now I'm offering 15% off. If you like this video, you subscribe and mention this video when you're booking that rental. I'll hook you up. Bro discount. Yeah. All right, nothing but love, y'all. Be blessed.